What is good with the YouTube? It is your boy, Sean Rock to the Represent Mandatory Thrive, HGBM, because every day it is mandatory for us to thrive, and I am back again with another video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about various different things. First, I'm going to talk about trauma, then I'm going to talk about internal growth, and I'm going to talk about why internal growth is important. So the first thing I want to talk about is childhood trauma. We all have some form of childhood trauma. We've all experienced it in some form or fashion, whether it's neglect, abuse, identity issues, insecurities, you name it. We've experienced it. Sibling rivalries, different things that we've seen from television to real life. We all have some form of childhood trauma, and I think that it's very, very vital for the majority of society to identify with their childhood trauma and address it, right? A lot of us don't address our childhood trauma. We suppress our childhood trauma. Let me say that again. A lot of us don't address our childhood trauma. We suppress our childhood trauma. And we suppress our childhood trauma because culturally, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, we've been taught naturally by, our ancestors, our friends, our family members, and just society as a whole to suppress over addressing. Why do we do this? Well, it's really simple. Addressing takes a lot more digging. It's a lot more painful in the beginning process, where suppressing, the tools are readily available. They're much more accessible to us according to what we may believe, and it's just an easier formula to deal with childhood trauma, to deal with pain. And how do we suppress? The main methods that we utilize to suppress, me in particular, I suppress like everybody else, but the main ways is usually through food consumption, which is one of the ones that people tend to not really respect as like a danger or as like a real way of suppressing, because we need nutrition to live, so a lot of times when it comes to overeating and food consumption, that's the easiest way we can get away with and manipulate. So overeating, food consumption is a big one. The second one is seeking validation, external validation through various different forms. Big one is alcohol, substance abuse, and drug abuse, whether that's smoking, cigarettes, blacks, weed, various forms. And mind you, I'm not talking about just typical recreational use. I'm talking about suppression. I'm not talking about recreational use of alcohol or drugs. I'm talking about using these things as a tool to suppress the emotional baggage, the childhood trauma that we experience. That's what I'm talking about. So alcohol and drugs and smoking is probably the biggest one that I see. What other some other ways? Overachieving, overworking is one. Relationships is one. In various other forms of ways that we suppress. Now what these things do is they basically put a temporary band-aid on a much bigger issue, right? Like, you can essentially you're able to, or you're capable to, put a patch job over a car. Like you can have a car, right, and you can get it painted, but that doesn't mean that the engine is fine. That doesn't mean that the oil doesn't need change. That doesn't mean that the transmission is in bad shape. And you can make it look good on the outskirts, but when you're driving, eventually that car is going to break down because that engine is bad, or the transmission is bad, or it needs an oil change, or it may need a new steering system, right? Or the brakes may be bad. The most important things on a car you can't see, right? The most important things on the car you can't see, which is the engine, the transmission, things like this. Without an engine or transmission, you're not going anywhere. That's what the internal work is. And we suppress these things by putting a band-aid over them. And we do this because it's easier. It feels good, right? It creates an illusion. It's more about escapism, right? Instead of creating a better place to be, if that makes sense. So what suppression does is it creates escapism instead of a better place to be. See, you're escaping your home instead of creating a better home for yourself. Now, let's talk about addressing why we should address these things and ways that we can utilize to address these things. Well, to address these things is the sole purpose of my channel, right? We want to thrive. We don't want to survive. We don't want to live. We don't want comfort, complacency, or a life of, just bare minimum. We want to thrive. It's mandatory that we thrive. So the first reason why we should address these things so that we can have a life that's a thriving life, a life that's full, a life that's purposeful, a life that's fulfilling. And if we're not addressing our childhood traumas, you're not going to have a life of thriving. You're going to have a life of surviving. You're going to have a life of living, which is low tier. You want to be top tier, how Luck said, top shelf, healthy, right? So the way that a phenomenal way to address our childhood trauma is through therapy. But therapy is expensive, or could be challenging. Maybe your schedule doesn't work with therapy, blah, 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 blah. I did therapy for about 6 months straight. Just a moment. All right, so look, so I had to help somebody out real fast, but anyways, I'm back. So the reason why, lost my train of thought. Let's get it back. Okay, so we want to address these things, and a good method is through seeking therapy, but that's not one of the methods that everybody has accessible to them, or it could be affordable, not be affordable, and all of those different things. So my method for most people, I think is best, is journaling. I think journaling does a variety of things of dealing with childhood trauma, because number one, the first thing it does is it gets it out, right? First thing you need to do is get it out, talk about it. Then you need to process it, right? And then you need to dissect it, right? And then you need to sit with it, and then you need to overall address it and see how it's affected you and how it's impacted you. And this is why internal work is forever. We do a lot of work, even myself, we do a lot of work right now. Like I'm growing a beard, right? I'm growing my dreads out. I'm building up my shoulders, I'm building up my physique, I'm building up my body, to look and appear a certain type of way. That's external work. We spend a lot of time on external work, jewelry, clothes, cars, houses. These are all things that are great and that we should give effort to. But I feel like we also should give equal, if not more, work to the internal work, because what you see when you look at people that's great and people that can overcome obstacles is that they have great internal strength, right? They have strong internal value in themselves. They have strong belief systems in themselves, like they've done the shadow work, like they've built themselves up, or maybe not. And usually what happens with people that don't have great internal health is they break down, right? You know, life whoops their ass, right? They get smacked all around the place because they think, oh well, if I get this riches, I get this fame. If I get this amount of this, I get this, that, and the third. Then they're going to be okay. And they realize very quickly, like, you have to have the internal work done to sustain that. So for me, my thing has always been work internally, outward. Like let the outer version of myself be a reflection of the internal work that I'm doing on myself, which we would call it shadow work, right? We'll call it, working on yourself, learning yourself, knowing the man, understanding the man, redeeming the man, building the man, praying with God, sitting with God, worshiping with God, learning about God, learning about yourself, learning about society. You have to understand who God is. You have to understand who you are. You have to understand who society is. You have to kind of put them all together and kind of build a conglomerate of a great foundation for yourself. And it's important. The internal work portion of it is probably the most pivotal and critical part, and it's also the most neglected part, because in my experience it's the hardest thing to do. I just journaled today, and I'm not even done yet. This is just the journal from today, and it's deep, it's intense, it hurts, it's hard, processing all the different experiences that I'm having. And I got boxes and boxes full of journals from the past year that I've been doing. And I would say this past year or two has been my best years, and I think it's been my best years because I've been doing that internal work. And that's why I think it's important to continue on my channel, to continue talking about the power of journaling, because the power of journaling is like, it's a free therapist, right? It's a free reflection. And I did a video earlier. No, not a video. I did a conversation with a homeboy earlier, and we were talking about childhood trauma. And the main talking point that me and this brother was coming up with was how there was an absence of strong masculinity within the context of what we needed. So because of this, we didn't have people to go to guide us in all of these different things. And you may be in that position where you have to make your journal that thing for yourself. Hope this video helps, man. Remember, dream big, work hard, live great, don't stop. It's your boy Shara Rock. Salute to the games. Peace.